Calculating fractions and decimals can be one of the most challenging things that fifth graders have to do, but I'd really like to take you through step by step here. I think that if you follow through just the step by step process, a lot of it can be um, easier than it has been normally for lots of kids. All right, so if you look at fractions and decimals, first, any fraction that has a 10 or 100 or 1,000 or anything like that in the denominator can be just turned right into a decimal. If that isn't the case, if you can turn it into something that has a 10 or 100 in the denominator, then go ahead and do that, and then turn it into a decimal. If nothing, neither one of those two works, then take the numerator and divide by the denominator. We're going to go through direct things on all three of those, so just some examples. All right, so first, these are the easiest ones. If you can just say them out loud, you should be able to hear that they are, um, you can write them as decimals. So here's 3/10. If you understand place value of decimals, you know that this is 3/10. It's a spot right after the decimal point, so it would just be 3/10. So these two are equal. This is as a fraction, and this is as a decimal, and it's both the exact same amount. This is 2 and 87 hundredths. So again, it's going to be the same exact thing. Here's 2, and is always the decimal point, and then hundredths is 2 decimal places. So 2 and 87 hundredths. So these two are the same right here. Just as an aside, if it was going to be 2 and 87 thousandths, then you would have a 2 and you need 3 places to be thousandths, but you're going to have only 87, so you would have that 0 there, and then 87. So this is 2 and 87 thousandths. That's how the difference between those two shows up. All right, now with these, this is the second part. If the denominator of the fraction isn't 10 or 100, you might be able to turn it into a fraction that does, then turn it into a decimal. All right, so 4/5 doesn't end in, it doesn't have a denominator that's a 10 or 100 or 1,000, but it's not too hard to turn it into one that does. Okay, you'd like to be this, have this in tenths. So all we have to do is take that times 2 halves. We chose 2 because 5 times 2 makes 10. And whatever we do to the bottom, we have to do to the top as well. So 4 times 2 is 8. Well, now we've got 8/10. It's just like one of these, where it's already in 10, 100, or 1,000. So just with one simple multiplication, we turned it into 8/10, and now it can easily turn into 8/10 as a decimal. So all of these are equivalent. 4/5, 8/10, and 8/10. They are all equal to one another. They're all equivalent. All right, so here's 3 and 21/25. Okay, it's easy to turn 25ths into 100. Just again with a simple multiplication, 25 times something is going to give us 100. I always like to multiply these because I think of quarters, like a 25-cent piece. It takes 4 quarters to make a dollar. So I like working with 25ths. I know that if I take 25 times 4, I'm going to get 100, just like 4 quarters make a dollar. Whatever I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top as well. So 25 times 4 is 100. 21 times 4 gives me 84. All right, so now I've got 3, my whole number, and 84 hundredths as a whole number and decimal combination. That's 3 and that's the decimal point, 84 hundredths. Write that down low right next to there. Okay, so 3 and 84 hundredths. Hundredths because I have exactly 2 decimal places. 1 decimal place would give me tenths. 2 decimal places gives me hundredths. All right, this one again, with one simple multiplication, we're going to have hundredths again. So 50 times 2 is 100. 39 times 2 is 78. 78 hundredths and 39 fiftieths are equivalent. And as a decimal, that's 78 hundredths. So that is equivalent to each of these. All right, like I said earlier, if neither of those work, then you can just take the numerator and divide by the denominator. So I'm just going to take 4, divide by 7, and press equals, and I get a really long decimal here. Many times what they'll ask you to do is just round that to 2 decimal places. So in this case, I've got 57 hundredths. Add a 1 after it, so that would mean it would stay at 57 hundredths. Okay. If it would have been a 5 or a larger, then I would have rounded up to 58 hundredths. Okay, same thing with this down here. I've got 19 divided by 35. Press equals, and I have 54 hundredths of the 2, so I would just keep it at 54 hundredths. And again, the directions will tell you what they'd like you to do. If they'd like you to round to 2 decimal places, um, you don't always get a decimal point that just goes on and on and on and on. So sometimes you get a nice short ending. All right, changing decimals into fractions and going the other way around instead of changing fractions into decimals. I just wrote down 3 steps here. Use place values to say that amount out loud. Write down the words that you say and simplify if the directions asked you to. So this is 1 and 2 tenths. You have to be able to name these using place value. 1 and 2 tenths. So if I can say that out loud, I should be able to write it down. This is 1 and 2 tenths. Now if they did ask us to simplify down to simplest form or lowest terms, I've got a 2 and a 10. I could divide by 2 on the top and 2 on the bottom, and then I would get 1 and 1/5. 2 divided by 2 to get 1, 10 divided by 2 to get 5. So this is equivalent to this, which is equivalent to this. All of these are the same amount. Same thing down here. I got 2 decimal places here, so that's hundredths. So I've got 90 hundredths. This ends in 0 and this ends in 0. So I can divide both top and bottom by 10. 90 divided by 10 is 9. 100 divided by 10 is 10. And now I've got 9 tenths, which is the same thing, which is equivalent to 90 hundredths, which is equivalent to 90 hundredths as a decimal. So these are all equal to one another. Using these things, then you can compare fractions and decimals. You can see which one is larger. Either get both written as fractions with common denominators, or get both written as decimals and then compare them. I'm going to do this both ways here. I've got 3/5 here. And I've got 52 hundredths here. So I'm going to take 52 hundredths right here. And I'm going to get fifths and turn that into hundredths. I can't leave it just like this if I want to end up on hundredths. I have to get something, 5 times something to give me 100. 5 times 20 will give me 100. If I do it to the bottom, I have to do it to the top as well. 5 times 20 is 100. 3 times 20 is 60. So I can see now that this is equivalent to this. So now I've got 60 hundredths, and that is larger than 52 hundredths. So 3/5 is larger than 52 hundredths. All right, the other way I can do that then is just to take the numerator 3, divide by the denominator 5. 5 is too large to go into 3, so I get a 0. Decimal point, decimal point. Now 5 into 30 is 6. and I don't have anything left. So this is, as a decimal, 6/10. Remember, you can always add a 0 to the back of any decimal you want to. So I got 60/100ths, and that's greater than 52/100ths. I did this two separate ways here. One way I got them both turned into fractions with a denominator of 100. And down here I got them both turned into decimals. And they're both decimals, and I can compare them easily. I'm going to do the same thing here. I've got 1 and 1/5, 1 and 23/100ths. Okay, so this is 1 and 23/100ths. This is 1 and 1/5. So if I would like that to be 100, again, I'll take this times 20. 5 times 20 will give me 100. If I do it to the bottom, I have to do it to the top. 1 times 20 is 20. So I have 1 and 20/100ths, and that's less than 1 and 23/100ths. So again, this one is just a little bit greater. If it was money, it would only be 3 cents more than this one. This would be $1.20. This would be $1.23. All right, I can turn them both into decimals also. Maybe I'll do it this way this time. 1/5 times 2/2 gives me 2/10. Okay, so I just turned 1/5 into 2/10. And I chose 10 because I could turn it into a decimal really easily. So I've got 1 and 2/10 and 1 and 23/100ths. I've got two decimal places here, only one here, so again I can add a 0 to the back. And again you see that 1 and 23/100ths is larger than 1 and 20/100ths. Alright, so um, that's a way you can go through and look at fractions and decimals and see how they can both be written um, as one another. Every fraction can be written as a decimal. Every decimal can be written as a fraction. They are the same amounts. They are just written in different forms. And we have to be able to comfortably move between fractions and decimals both.